Welcome back to the Closing Chapters podcast. This week, we're going to talk about how there's no way that house will sell for that amount. What an interesting story do I have to tell you. If you've ever wondered what's really going on behind the scenes in a real estate transaction, you're in the right place. Whether it's the nail-biting negotiations, the crazy twists and turns throughout a transaction, or the moments that just make you want to pull your hair out, it's all going to be shared. I'm Brittany Fry, and I am the host of the Closing Chapters podcast. Here, we are going to talk about my career transaction by transaction since 2016. And we're also going to go through all of the golden nuggets that I've learned along the way that I would love to share with you. I want to shape your reality in real estate to a world that you can be confident, educated, and make really wonderful decisions for your financial future and build a real estate portfolio. No matter if you are a real estate investor, a first-time home buyer, or a luxury buyer, there's something to be had in this podcast. You're going to see throughout the series that military is really my heart. That is my niche, and if you are a military buyer or seller, you will thrive listening to this podcast. So, grab a seat at the closing table and let's close some chapters. So, let's begin. Back in 2018, I listed this house December 10th, 2018 on Watermark Drive, which is my infamous road in Dalzell, South Carolina, right outside of the base that I had 5 transactions on one road, which is pretty darn cool, I think. So this was one of them, and we listed it for $139,000. Now, I'm going to tell you a little interesting story about this. This was the ex-wife's house that the husband bought for the ex-wife. Interestingly enough, he lived on the same road at the other end with his current wife and children. The ex-wife happened to be their nanny. It was quite an interesting situation. But the end-all be-all is that the ex-husband is the one that had title to this property. So even though I was talking and doing everything with the ex-wife, he's the one that had to sign off on everything. He's the one that had to sign the listing agreement, sign all of the offer documents, and he swore up and down that there was no way that her house was worth $139,000. Friends, this house now would sell for $250,000, give or take, which is amazing. But this was, once again, back in 2018-19 and before this crazy boom that nobody would have ever anticipated. So regardless, it was still a really good return on investment. They bought the property for less than $100,000. So he just swore up and down, I was loony and there was no way we were getting that. Even though I showed him the numbers, because I'm a numbers person, I don't play guessing games, okay? So we listed this, and mind you, back in 2016 to 19, almost 20, it was very average for us to do a 1-year listing contract and for it to take at least 180 days to be sold. That was our norm. This sucker closed on March 20th, 2019, which means we had it under contract in February, which means it took me 2 months in the winter when it is not selling season to sell this house for $500 less than list price was what we negotiated. So this guy was amazed, to say the least. He really thought that I had really just lost it and that my head was in the clouds. And I told him, I said, let's just try it and then we'll regroup them. If you don't believe me, you're in control and we can price it lower if that's what you want. But I'm here to give you the overall outcome that you desire. And then it was like, no, we'll try it. So he was very pleased and also expected me to do the same for his property later on. The difference is that this property was a little bit bigger. It had more acreage. I did sell his property and we did just fine on that. But it was really interesting to see how the dynamics can change a little bit. And honestly, I think it was like almost the enviousness of, oh, this property is bigger and it's going to sell for more than mine. And that's unacceptable because it's not my property, like the one that I actually live in, even though both of them were really his property. The things that made this property work well, they had done a lot of renovations, and I'll tell you, the bedrooms were actually not really big. There were 3 small bedrooms down a hallway, but they redid the primary bathroom, and that helped a ton. It had a beautiful walk-in shower, no tub. and they made a decent little closet in the room, and everything was just nice and new. It was fresh. And most of the house had hardwood floors, which also helped it a ton. And there was a formal dining room, plus a living room with a huge fireplace and an okay sized kitchen. And the kitchen had a lot of updates as well. So then we had laundry room, like mudroom type of situation off of a really nice large garage, two separate big garage. And in the backyard was extremely spacious and had an outdoor grill like built in. So there was a lot going for it. It was on a corner lot, only had a neighbor on one side. The backyard neighbor didn't really butt up to it that much because of the way that the house was. It was like their side of their house butted up to the back of this house. So honestly, it was a really nice location. Side load garage. So it had a really nice sight line from the street. It was up on a hill. So it just created a lot of nice privacy, buffer space in general. And that was really good. It had a lot of great natural light, huge window in the formal dining room. So the things that were done right. Now, the challenges we had to overcome is that the bedrooms were minimal, but there was a lot of stuff in the rest of the house. So they really had to get a lot of the stuff out. And there was a slew of pups at this house. So every time we had a showing, they had to get out, and that was a little bit difficult. But we don't need a bunch of barking dogs when we're trying to show the house. And I'm a dog person, so don't get me wrong. It's just that doesn't help sell houses. It just doesn't. Or it's a distraction from the house. People like animals for the most part, but if they're there and they're playing with your dog, they are not looking at your house. That's all there is to it. So those were the couple of things that we really had to work around. The other part is that the garage was in rough shape, meaning there was drywall that was split or coming down or just really scuffed up walls. But it's a garage, so you can't hold that to a T. However, when the rest of the house looks a certain way and then the garage didn't match it, that was definitely something that was commented on. But we went from one military family to another military family, and it served them great. And this just goes to say that if you do the right things, if you listen to your trusted advisor, prep the house in the right manner, have professional photography done, and listen to shown instructions, then a lot of times everything goes accordingly to plan. And you also have to listen to the pricing strategy, honestly. And here's the thing. There is a true finesse between pricing it too high and holding the value of the neighborhood, okay? As realtors, we want you to net what you want, and price is not always the thing. Like, that is not always the motivation to sell. So I'm going to say that first and foremost. It's not always about the money. And I've had several times where it is not about the money. It's literally, I just need to get up and out of this so that I can get into my next place. And I can't afford both payments. So please help me get it sold. But when we have the opportunity to hold a standard, then we really want to keep it where the closest comparables are at for the neighborhood. We want to keep the value of the neighborhood stable, because if we have one house that sells high and then another one that's selling extremely low and then one in the middle and then it's all over the board, then what's the value of the neighborhood? What's the standard? And obviously we have to keep condition in mind and a lot of other things, upgrades, the size of the home, but we coordinate all of that within our comparable market analysis. So the idea for us is that we really truly want to help withhold a good value for the neighborhood, because that's not only going to help you, it's going to help all of your neighbors in the future. So we need that consistency piece. And here's the other thing too. When you have a roller coaster of pricing within a neighborhood, that does not help sell your house, because when an appraiser comes in and they're looking at these other properties that seem to be similar to yours, and they're only going by pictures, they don't get to walk into the property and see it. They know the size of it from what it is online, and then they've got the pictures that they can see. That's what they're going off of in any information in the listing. So they don't know, unless it's quite visible, what a lot of these discrepancies are, why this was priced high and why this was priced low, unless it is very well known and stated within the listing. And that can make it really confusing and hard for them to put the pieces together and say, is this house truly worth this value? So Really, truly, there is a finesse to doing this and making sure that we are walking the line of holding that value and not being unreasonable, whether it's high or low. We want to hold a standard. And the other reality, too, is we have to pay attention to what's in the immediate area around us, because a lot of times appraisers are going to look as close as possible within the neighborhood, but sometimes lenders require them to get several comps from a radius, but they're not all allowed to be just within the neighborhood, which I find interesting because that would be the best comparable properties is what's in the specific neighborhood. But also, it can trip you up one way or the other. We've talked about this before, but I've had a deal where the opposite happened. We were priced high via the seller's request, and I told them that I felt like we needed to get an appraisal because they had the biggest house and it was custom in their neighborhood, and I knew that we were going to have issues with it when it came time for appraisal. And sure enough, we did. It came back $18,000 low, and the sellers had nothing to prove for it because I couldn't prove it within the neighborhood. And the comparable properties that did match it, the appraiser wouldn't use them because they felt like it was a higher quality neighborhood than this one was. And the difference was is this was more of a country neighborhood on half-acre lots a little bit further out. The other ones were a couple miles closer to town. And you're talking about like the difference of wood fences versus wrought iron fences. The one neighborhood that I used truly was not that much difference. That was the difference, is there was a pond in the middle of it, but the properties that had sold were not pond lots. And they tend to have wrought iron fencing versus, or the wrought iron lookalike, whatever you want to call it, versus the privacy wood fencing. But they wouldn't budge. And we don't have control over that, but so much. So if an agent tells you, hey, I feel like there's a red flag here, like I'm a little bit nervous doing this, then listen to them. We're not trying to waste your money. We don't want you to pay for an appraisal as a seller unless it's necessary. Because most of the time, we're pretty confident and can give you a pretty tight price point range that we should be guiding off of. But if you don't like our range, or you need another opinion, or if you're an oddball property, then sometimes it's really worth it to get that third party appraisal done, because then you have that appraisal to hold in your hand and hand over. And usually as long as it's within 60 days or so, then it holds a lot of weight because that's peer to peer. It's not coming from me. It's not coming from the seller. It's coming from another professional in the appraisal world. So I say all that to say, one, lean into your trusted advisor. We are here for a reason. And if we are confident, then trust our confidence. Believe in us. We're here. We've got your back. But if we tell you something else needs to happen, or that we're a little bit weary that we're shooting for the sky and the stars and the moon, and that's not going to happen, we don't want it to come crashing down on your head, listen to us, because we are looking out for your best interest. I always tell people when we have these uncertain situations, it's going to bite you now or later. It's the same thing with repairs. I tell people all the time too, if you're going to list your property, you should consider doing a pre-listing home inspection, because those repairs are going to show up and it's going to bite you now or later. Would you prefer to handle it now while you have the time and control over it? Or would you prefer to handle it later when you're already under contract, trying to pack, get out the door, and now you have less than 2 weeks to get it handled? I'd prefer to take my time and make sure I can get it all taken care of. The caveat to that is something can change every single day, and each inspector is going to see something a little bit different or catch something that the other one didn't. So you always have to anticipate a couple of loose ends being tied up if the buyer were to get their own inspection after the fact. But still, it gives you a huge leg up and shows that you have done the work to make your house marketable when you do that. So listen to your trusted advisors. We're here to be on your side. We're not here to fight against you, and we don't want to play tug of war. And I also want to caveat that with, this guy wasn't fighting against me. He just really thought that the house was not going to sell for that. He was totally fine with trying it and said, let's give it 3 months. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll regroup. So I think he was just like watching the clock, hoping that he could prove me wrong. But the reality was that we were totally fine. We were in a good price point. And like I said, that actually boded really well for him because he also had another property that he was living in on the other end of the street. So this property became a comparable for that property. Pretty cool, huh? I hope that this is a little bit eye-opening, that you can understand on our side of the rope that we are not trying to push or pull against you, but we really are seeing it from a third-party perspective. We are looking from the outside in. We are actually doing the data and being very systematic about it. And you, my friends, have a lot of emotions wrapped up in your properties, as you should. But it's not my job to put on rose-colored glasses just to appease you, one way or the other. It's my job to be your trusted professional and to show you where the data is coming from, why it makes sense, and to hold my own, right? To tell you the strategies, to tell you the plan, to say, hey, this is plan A. I don't think we need a plan B, but if we have to go to that route, this is what we're going to look at. And then also the reverse. If you are going to insist upon some specific measure, then I have the choice to either accept that or say, hey, we're not a great fit. And a lot of times I'm going to tell you, hey, we're not a great fit. If somebody's pushing against the grain against me from the get-go, that's never come out well in the end. So I've learned that we need to be aligned. If we're not aligned, then I'm not your person, or you're not ready to sell. One or the other is going on there. Before you decide that you're just going to push against your person, your trusted advisor that is giving you information, listen. Be open, honest, trusting, and just listen. There is nothing in it for us if we do not sell the property. There is no reason for us to purposely sell it low or high. Because if we don't sell it at all, then we don't get paid. And I think that part is forgotten so often. Everybody thinks, not everybody, let me back up. There's such a misconception in the world that realtors are here just to wheel and deal. There's no wheel and deal about this. This is not a quick turnover business. The quickest we are getting paid is within 30 days. The quickest. And that's if we put it on the market and the next day it got an offer and we literally got it ready for the market in 2 days and it was a cash offer and it closed before 30 days. There's nothing fast about this business on our end in terms of getting a paycheck. So please remember that our motive is 100% just to take care of you. It has nothing to do with getting a paycheck. Is that a great after fact of it? Absolutely. But we don't get paid up front. So I think you need to remember that. Because if you were pushing back against me, for what? You haven't paid me a dime. I am working for free. Why would I work for free if I just wanted to give you misinformation? Why would I work for free if I wanted to struggle through a transaction? Why would I work for free if I knew that I couldn't sell the property? We're here for you. So, you can sell any property at the right price. And sometimes you'll be surprised. It'll be higher, or I'm going to give you the reality. But in this case, it was higher, my friends, and that is a beautiful surprise.